everyone. I'm gonna get started here. Welcome to Trending Topics. Once people get signed in, if you could tell me a hello, tell me if my volume is okay, tell me where you're from. I should turn on the light. Let me see. That's probably better. Yeah. We're not gonna have much options for lighting. I'm up in Vancouver, so this is where I'm staying, so this is what you're getting. So thanks for joining, everybody. My name is Zach Keller. Welcome to Trending Topics. Please share this out. We've got a really exciting, crazy, interesting show tonight. I'm going to give a special report about the developments in the DNC fraud lawsuit, which happened today, this evening. And I spoke with Jared Beck and Elizabeth Beck on the phone just now, so I am as in the know as anyone can possibly be, and I'm so excited to share. Hey, Catherine. What's up, Melissa? I'm so excited to give you guys all the updates so everybody knows what to make of this development today, and I'll probably write a follow-up piece on it. I'm on vacation, so I don't really want to be writing, but at the same time, I am desperate to stay informed and make sure everybody is also staying informed about everything, because we as a public need to be very consistent with our messaging for what we're asking from our leaders and journalists and media and politicians. So the more effective we are at our public messaging strategy in approaching power and calling them out and saying what we need to say. Hey, Shane. Where do you live, Shane? I don't even know. Is it California? I don't know. Tell me where you live. Not like specifically. Don't obviously. General whereabouts, congressional districts, where do you vote? Okay, everybody, I'm drinking local champagne and local orange juice. I don't know, it's from Canada. I'm up in Vancouver. Cheers. Thanks for joining, everyone. So the rule is here on Trending Topics, when I drink, you drink. So drink something, even if it's just water is life. Drink something. It feels really good. It's really hydrating. So, gonna get started. My name is Zach Haller. Oh no, shit. I have to share this out. God damn it. Give me 1 second. So if you didn't share this, do that. So as we're thinking about our people's revolution, our media revolution, hey, what's up, Indiana? So you want to make sure that you're being smart about how you're sharing information, because part of what's important in terms of getting truth and information out there is who's telling the truth, who's telling it, and also you want to make sure that people see that you're being truthful. Hold on 1 second, sorry. Where's that box? Okay. Posted. Okay, I got it on my... No, shit, god damn. You guys, I screw up. Oh, I just accidentally shared this on the Real Progressives page instead of mine, so sorry, Real Progressives, if someone could share that or delete that. The Facebook is confusing. I sound so old. I've been on Facebook since it was invented, okay? So my name is Zach Haller. Welcome to Trending Topics here on Real Progressives, where we talk about what's trending, what's not, and what certainly should be. I'm reporting to you live from the West Coast here in Vancouver, Canada. You can kind of see the mountains in the background. It's really beautiful here. So I'm going to give you an update on the DNC fraud lawsuit, because as you may have seen from Elizabeth and Jared Beck's Twitter feed, where they update everything on the DNC lawsuit, there was a development today in the form of an odd, very bizarre phone call that came in to Elizabeth and Jared Beck's office in Florida. And basically you can see so the DNC fraud lawsuit's Twitter is at DNC fraud lawsuit, and that's where all of the most up-to-date information on the fraud lawsuit is, and the most retweets of the best people's content about the DNC fraud lawsuit. So if you ever get a shout out on it, you're doing something right. And so go to the DNC fraud lawsuit, and you can see that they submitted some evidence to the court today, because today at the end of the workday, so at about 5 p.m., just before 5 p.m., Jared and Elizabeth Beck's law firm in Florida got a weird phone call, and it came up on the ID. And so I spoke to Jared and Elizabeth Beck just before this on the phone. So I talked to them about what happened, and so I know what's going on, so I'm not just guessing, right? Because there's a lot of weirdness. So I just spoke to them and hey Jared and hey Elizabeth, if you're working or if you're watching, and I hope the kids got to bed, and I know that I was bothering your kids probably by taking their loving parents away, but your kids sounded adorable just from the phone, so that's super cute. So I spoke to Jared and Elizabeth, tore them away from the children's bedtime. They're so generous. And got the updates on what happened. So basically, this afternoon, at the end of the workday, one of their assistants took a phone call that came in from a number that on the caller ID registered as a U.S. government number. So Jared and Elizabeth were not in the office at the time, and so what happened was one of the assistants answered the phone, and there was no name listed on the ID number. They didn't know who the person's phone number. They didn't recognize this phone number at the time that they picked up the call. It just did identify it as something that was a government affiliation. There was some indicator on the caller ID that said like a public government number. So they did know that it was an interesting number, that it was something kind of out of the ordinary, so they did want to answer the phone. They didn't realize that there was no way they would have known necessarily that the number was from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. So they got this phone call, the assistant picked up the phone, and I'm going to get you guys some more information about this. So I'm going to leave some details out that I don't know yet, and I'll get you that in written form or in another video later this week or weekend. And so the assistant at Lee and Beck's law group answered the phone, and it was a person who refused to identify themselves, right? Like typically you'd answer the phone at a law firm, hi, who's calling, right? This person chose not to identify themselves. So kind of interesting, odd, but at the same time, for civil cases, especially for class action lawsuits where plaintiffs are public, members of the public, it's not uncommon to be seeking information about the lawsuit, right? So they took this call, and this person chose not to identify themselves, fine. The assistant continued to speak with them, and they asked them basically a line of questioning. And over the course of the questioning, the assistant at their law firm basically realized that it was kind of an auto-tuned voice. Basically, it was that person, the assistant realized that she couldn't even tell like what type of person was speaking on the phone. It was just so monotone that she realized eventually that it was a recorded, kind of one of those voice audio, Snapchat filters that fixes your voice, right? By the way, keep drinking. I get on these long tangents and I forget to drink. Feel free to drink on your own and remind me. Oh my god, I'm totally gonna try something stupid later. Remind me to try something stupid later. Oh, I probably will regret this later. But anyway, a drinking related thing. So they're on the phone, and the person who's calling from this unknown number but government number is asking a series of questions, and they were questions about the case. It was not in a threatening manner at all. It was very neutral. And again, I spoke to Jared and Elizabeth about this, so I asked them all these questions. So I'm not just guessing. I wouldn't just guess, okay, right? I'm not going to give you anything that's not like I know it's first source or I'm telling you that this is what I observe. So they spoke, and it was a very neutral conversation, and the person that was on the other phone chose not to identify themselves, and it was basically talking through an auto-tune or a voice filter. And they asked a series of questions about the case, which, of course, basically, as you may know, the opposing counsel, the DNC, basically when legal teams are working kind of against each other in litigation, they obviously want to know what each other's attack strategies are, what their legal strategies are, so they can be able to prepare to counteract any of the legal strategies that might come at them from opposing counsel over the course of the case progress, right? So it makes sense that the DNC would kind of want to know, the DNC's lawyers would kind of want to know what approach Jared and Elizabeth are taking to litigating this case, because the more that they can prepare, they can do the best they can to debunk or attempt to fight their case against Elizabeth and Jared if they know what Elizabeth and Jared are going to argue. So there is kind of incentive for the DNC to want to know their strategy, or anyone being nosy trying to figure it out. Obviously, it's like they wouldn't, you would think that they'd be a little bit more sly about how they're going to kind of coax that information out of Jared and Elizabeth. But I'm basically just explaining that it's not that uncommon for someone to call and ask information about a public case, but at the same time, it's really fishy that they would do that. And the assistant at the law firm basically gave them just publicly accessible information, referenced the transcripts, referenced all the public record, and that was it. And the call was it was longer than 5 minutes ish. Again, I'm going to speak to the gal, I believe it was a gal named Kimberly, that took the call, and I'm going to chat with her hopefully soon and get you guys a report a little bit more about this, just to kind of figure it out, right? Just to ask a few questions right now. Don't want to make this a mountain out of a molehill, but after the call was over, Elizabeth and Jared looked up the phone number, and it turned out, basically just a quick Google search, Elizabeth was able to determine that the number came from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office, or supposedly did, right? The caller ID said that the number that this call was originating from was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's phone number, which is, they're all down in the Miami area, and so it's all kind of in that little area where this call was supposedly from, and after they looked it up, they realized that it was possibly from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. So that happened. Odd, right? The first thing that you think of is, okay, this person, there's this spoofing a call, right? You can fake a phone call. You can punk someone, basically. And so if you were to immediately assume that this was just some random person messing with Jared and Elizabeth, okay, right? The most harmless approach, right? What's that first harmless consideration? It's just some random person. They were using one of these softwares. They were like, oh, it would be the weirdest if I did Debbie's phone number, so I'll put that in as the number we're calling from, and I'll just go and kind of ask really casual questions just to mess with them, right? So it's like, okay, if this is completely harmless, that's just kind of a weird, it's just kind of like, I'm like, are these the things that David Brock's people are paying themselves to do at this point? It's like, oh, let's just do something stupid today. Oh, let's crank call Jared and Elizabeth. It's just like, who would spend their spare time doing this? It's just a really weird question. I know people are bored, but it's just kind of odd. And it was completely neutral. It wasn't like it was harassing. And it's important to know that this wasn't a harassing call at all. Elizabeth said that the assistant who took the call was totally casual and normal, other than the fact that it was an anonymous person and that it was supposedly from Wasserman Schultz's office. And so basically, since the judge needs to understand all of what's going on in determining how he rules on this case, right? So just a quick background, the case, we're waiting for an order from the judge. The oral hearings on the motion to dismiss took place about a month ago. Jared and Elizabeth are defending the people. Major props to them. They're American heroes. They're defending us, and the DNC just had this horrible showing in court where they said we could have rigged the primary because we're too big to jail, but we didn't. That was the summary of the court hearings. And so now they're trying to dismiss the lawsuit. So now we're waiting. And so now in this waiting period, Elizabeth and Jared have received a weird phone call from a number that's supposedly from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. So the judge needs to know these types of things. They have an obligation to let the judge know that the defendant of their lawsuit, right? Debbie as a person is a defendant in the lawsuit in addition to the lawsuit being filed against the DNC. It's DNC and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So so Debbie as a defendant, if her office is calling in an unsolicited manner, if they're calling the law firm of the opposing counsel in this weird kind of ambiguous way, the judge should know that. That's just something that, by process, Elizabeth and Jared would file that documentation to put on the court record so the judge knows what's going on, right? Because in a lot of these cases, they're looking at kind of punitive damages, and they're looking to try and to understand the demeanor of the people and the parties. So these types of things may or may not be relevant to the judge, but in a transparent way, you want to offer anything to the judge that's of the nature of, that's related to the opposing parties in the lawsuit. So Jared and Elizabeth basically had to file a short description of what happened to the judge so he knows that it happens. And that's what happened today. So you can go and look at their posts online. You can read their description of the bizarre incident, right? They didn't claim that it was particularly anything other than that records show that this number was coming from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. Again, the plaintiff of the lawsuit that they're filing against them. So the judge now knows this. So now it's on court record. Great. They have it. And now what does that mean? Where do we go from here? Drinky, drinky, drink. There's a lot of local beers up here in Vancouver. I'm like, I have so much to drink this weekend. And I'll get to the Allman Brothers. Okay, it's 7:22. Okay, I'm going to pace myself. I'm going to do the last 20 minutes on the Allman Brothers. I'm going to talk about this for 20 more minutes. at least, or no more than 20 more minutes, because I have some notes from the call. So, where do we go from here? So basically what happened, to summarize all of that long-windedness, what happened was there was this random phone call that came to Jared and Elizabeth's law firm today that was supposedly from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office. The person was anonymous, and they just asked details about the case without saying who they were, and it was probably done on a voice recording system. It seems likely that this was a prank call, a spoof, that would only be illegal if it was threatening. It wasn't threatening, so it's not necessarily illegal, but it's relevant for the judge to know. So the attorneys for the people, Jared and Elizabeth Beck, submitted a document to the court that said that this happened. We don't know what we don't understand this, but this took place. So now, where do we go from here? So what makes the most sense is to try and figure out, right, who made the call. It probably wasn't Debbie, right? It probably was a spoof, because if Debbie needed to, needed to contact Elizabeth and Jared, they would have gone through counsel. This would have done it a different way if they had a specific ask. So it's an odd thing. It doesn't necessarily seem like they would have done it. Unless it was them that were doing the spoof, it probably was from a spoof call, and so they would have to dial in the phone number. So somebody would have had to decide, oh, I'm going to put it from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's number, and then those spoof I think it's called spoof. I need to look, but I think it's like the spoof app or something. But it's basically this thing that you can use to punk people. It's illegal in some places to do this. In the United States, it's only illegal if you are threatening or intimidating the person. In Canada, here, I was researching this law. In Canada, it's totally legal to do it anytime. So I could spoof anyone while I'm up here in Vancouver, and that'd be totally legit. But in the United States, if you fake a phone call to someone, it's only illegal if it's in a threatening or harassing manner. So this wasn't done in a threatening or harassing manner. So whoever did it probably either was completely naive, or completely innocent and harmless and just wanted to be completely anonymous for some reason, whatever, or they knew that they didn't want this call to get reported to law enforcement, because then maybe they would be able to look into who made the call. I'm not sure. My guess is if, the NSA has a $80 billion budget, they probably can figure out if they really needed to. They probably could trace this call even through the spoof if they wanted to figure out who it was. Right? I assume we have the technology if we need to go there, but we don't really know. But it probably was a spoofed call, right? So basically now what Elizabeth and Jared have done is informed the court, and we as the people who are observing this, and to some extent Jared and Elizabeth, so I'll work with them on this over the next few days, but we need to figure out if Debbie Wasserman's people want to admit that this was not them. Basically, we need to confirm or deny. Confirm or deny is the phrase that we want to say. We need to approach Debbie Wasserman Schultz's press people and say, look, as you know, this is a matter of public record. This has been documented. This call came supposedly from your office. If this wasn't a prank call, this came from your office. Can you confirm or deny that this anonymous call came from you, because we had to alert the judge and we'd like to give him as much information about the incident as possible, just for him to know, whatever it means, just for him to know. So we should approach, and the journalists of the internet will do this, and I don't know if it will make sense for Jared and Elizabeth to be involved in this, because this is not necessarily related to the merits of the lawsuit, so it's not really necessarily work they would do, but at the same time, depending on if the judge responds in any way, they may action this for a particular reason, because they need to. So, they may need to. So, basically what needs to happen now is the next step is we need to approach Debbie Wasserman's PR people or her press people and say, look, Debbie, this is odd. This came from your office. Can you confirm or deny that this call at 4:54 p.m. on June 1st, I think it's today, did that happen? Did that come from your office? Because if it did, that's fine, because it was non-threatening, but we would just want to know, because we told the judge, and we should tell him more if we know more, right? We want the judge to know everything, right? So we want to ask Debbie that to confirm that it was them, because if it was them, that'd be fine. They can just tell us, and that's fine, and we'll just let everybody know that happened, and it was no big deal. It's a non-threatening call. It's fine, right? Maybe somebody at Debbie's office voted for Bernie. Maybe somebody at Debbie's office wants the lawsuit to go through. Who knows? Probably. 99% of us. But anyway, if the Wasserman Schultz, when we contact them and say confirm or deny, they confirm, and then it's no big deal, right? Okay, we move on. It's a nothing burger, official nothing burger. They were just calling casually. Or they deny that it happened. And then they're like, wait a second, now at that, when we're game theory, right? We're thinking about all the possible outcomes. So now our next step is we either confirm or deny. We ask Debbie Wasserman Schultz's PR people to confirm or deny that this call came from their office today. The third option, of course, being that they could not respond to us. But if we ask them, we're going to say, do you confirm or do you deny that this call came from your office today? Why would you call Elizabeth and Jared's law firm and just do this kind of weird thing, right? It doesn't matter why they did it. We just want to know if they did or not. And if they did, then whatever. If they didn't, though, if they say, no, that absolutely didn't come from us, that actually opens a really interesting can of worms. Because at that point, then we would be able to tell Debbie Wasserman Schultz and their people, hey, look, somebody's impersonating your guys' office and making phone calls on your behalf, and although you may know about this and not feel threatened by this, which would kind of be incriminating, right? If Debbie Wasserman Schultz people see this and it's completely unrelated to them, then Debbie Wasserman Schultz people might want to be like, that's kind of weird, we should know. Obviously, it doesn't really necessarily matter, but that is kind of weird, right? And if it's not a big deal to them, then it's like, well, that would kind of show that that they don't care that people are impersonating them, calling law firms. Like, it's a weird thing, right? If they say it absolutely wasn't us, that'll be a weird thing, and we'll notice that, and that will basically mean that there's some random person, assuming that that's honest from them, right, just for the sake of believing them, that will mean that somebody's legitimately going out and impersonating them, calling Elizabeth and Jared Beck, and that's just weird, and that would be something that they can accept or not, but they would just know that somebody's impersonating them, and if Jared and Elizabeth's assistant wouldn't have been properly trained and diligent about only discussing publicly available information, right, snaps, maybe they would have been able to juice some information out, right? And then, to whose benefit, obviously who is calling. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office at least could figure out that somebody's calling and impersonating them. That might really concern them if this totally wasn't them. I don't know what skeletons they have in their closet. I'm trying to figure out what skeletons they have in their closet, but they're not into the transparency game. So we have to really dig, don't we? So the other outcome is that, so basically we're going to say, Debbie Wasserman, did you guys make this call? Confirm or deny? Confirm, cool, whatever. Deny, that's kind of weird. If they don't respond to us, well, then we see that. And maybe the judge eventually knows that. I don't know. The judge, I talked to Elizabeth, there's really no guarantee or idea as to if the judge will respond or not. Obviously, this is very, ancillary. It's very outside of what the judge is doing in terms of researching and writing and preparing how his response to the DNC, the oral arguments on the motion to dismiss. Oh, Canada is rubbing off on me, and one from Minnesota comes out once in a while. The DNC, they're doing their own thing now. So in the event that so there's no real likelihood that the judge is going to even respond to this order. Basically, they just filed documents to add to the record. So the judge has no requirement to make any response to Elizabeth and Jared on this. So there's no expectation for that. Jared and Elizabeth aren't changing, obviously, common sense, but just for the sake of this chat, they're not changing anything in terms of what they're doing based on this call. They're just noting that it happened. And now we know that this happened once. And if it happens again, right? So I'm sure Jared and Elizabeth, I chatted with them about this. It's like they're going to now, anyone will recognize what Debbie Wasserman's phone number is if they get another call like that. And so they'll know. And so they'll be able to ask on the phone, is this from Debbie Wasserman Schultz? The call will be very different if it ever happens again, right? And if it doesn't ever happen again, whatever, maybe it's a nothing burger and it's legitimate nothing burger, and that's fine. And if it is, that's fine. And I would love to know that, and then we know it's a nothing burger. But if this is some kind of weird type of psych you out harassment thing that, again, it's just kind of this random, it's like sending a fish in the mail. Elizabeth used this analogy on the phone, and this is exactly kind of the right analogy. It's like sending someone a fish in the mail. It's like, is it illegal? No. is, it's just kind of weird and, symptomatic of something else, probably. Obviously someone did it for a reason. So basically, now we can just kind of force Debbie Wasserman Schultz people to confirm or deny that this came from them, one way or the other, whatever, we figure that out. But the judge also, will be updated as more stuff plays out on this, because as, people's reactions to what the allegations are, watching the way the DNC presents themselves obviously impacts the judge's decision, because if the judge looks at the Democrats' public messaging and it's slimy, like when Debbie's like, look, let me be frank, if I wanted to rig the primary, I could have rigged the primary. Please. We have plenty of ways to enhance one candidate over the other. We could have, but we didn't. Like, Debbie legitimately said that right before the election. And that's just, that's just like the snakiest shit that you'll ever hear. But that type of thing, the judge obviously considers when he's evaluating all this, because that's what, fraud is misrepresentation. And when you see a misrepresentation of something over and over, that shows that there's intention behind it. And oh my gosh, I have so many articles drafted, but I still have to get this one article finished. That's really a long one. All of mine are so goddamn long these days. And it's mostly because I just like to drink while I'm doing it, because it's about 1 beer per page. It's my writing pace. But I have to identify all the, I don't want to spoil it. I'm going to let you guys be excited. But I have another big article about the DNC fraud lawsuit that I can write, that I'm working on. But, so basically, the judge will just be informed about all of this. Likely, it, will not really necessarily mean anything other than this is the type of maybe kind of harassment that Jared and Elizabeth, if it was, I don't think that, if nothing ever happens from this again, I don't necessarily think that we would even want to call this harassment, right? But at the same time, it is just very fishy that it was from Debbie Wasserman's phone, and in the future, we will at least know how they responded to us asking. So I guess we'll always have that information. But there's really nothing to do until we, probably hear back from them one way or the other in terms of what we think this means. And in terms of the lawsuit, it probably won't have any effect on the lawsuit, other than, again, just being the type of documentation that will be submitted to the court going forward if there are any other updates that the judge needs to know for him to be able to completely transparently understand what's going on and to be able to issue a ruling on the motion to dismiss based on his complete understanding of everything that's going on right now, including the dynamic between opposing counsels, because obviously if you see retaliatory actions or retaliatory behavior, if someone's retaliating for something, that means something happened that led them to retaliate. So the concept of retaliation is what the judge is basically sensing here, is looking for. And if there is none, then good, because that means that it's not like someone's going to, retaliate because they feel jaded. And if there is retaliation, then there's like, wait, why is there retaliation here? And what are the consequences of the retaliation? So that's basically the update on the weird phone call that came in today. So there's your exclusive report here on Real Progressives. Cheers. And now I have so many important things. Well, we could talk forever. And I have a YouTube channel now. So as a quick promo, go to my Twitter profile. It's on there. You can search the Zach Haller Affair. That's my new YouTube channel. And I'm actually going to make a video about the same thing for my YouTube channel, really quick, a really short one that will update. So we get it on YouTube in addition to the Real Progressives here on Facebook. So I wrote an article today about something else that I want to talk about. And this is related to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and interesting. Okay. Just in. Jack Posobiec. Debbie just is publishing something. I'm just seeing this retweeted on the DNC fraud lawsuit. Jack Posobiec. I don't really know him. Maybe I should. I don't know. 129,000 followers. Author, filmmaker, and recovering political operative. I think I've retweeted him before. Let's see here. What is he saying about this? I'm gonna try and read this while talking to you about the Awam brothers, because that is something that everyone really needs to learn about. And Vessel News, interesting. Epic fail. Wait, what? Interesting. Okay, so here we go. This is live news as it comes in. Vessel News, which I've never heard of, is now running a headline based on what I just explained that says epic fail. Debbie Wasserman Schultz uses voice changer to call law firm suing DNC and forgets to disable caller ID. This is a little odd because it really assumes that there's no possibility that it was faked, which I don't know, obviously, but when you're thinking it through, you want to consider that it's, if you know, there's a prank call app, right? There's an app for everything, and you can set someone up for this if you want. Did that happen? Whether or not, who knows? Debbie's a complete idiot, so it would be like her to send a phone call from her office to just be weird to Jared and Elizabeth Beck, so it very likely could have been forgetting to disable caller ID. But I don't really, that would be so odd that I don't think that they would. I mean, that would be surprising. But let me read this article quick, because it sounds like this individual, who seems reputable from my general sense of him on Twitter. I say the Twitter, the Facebook, kind of for funny, but then I just hear myself say it, and I'm like, I do think I'm just getting old. But so he's basically assuming that that this was absolutely from the DNC. Yeah, okay. Okay, so he says nothing. Okay. So this is a weird article. Okay. Well, this article is kind of nothing, so that's fine. It's basically, it's not even 350 words. Well, maybe barely. It's a super short article. And it just assumes that this was absolutely Debbie. So, you're kind of always sniffing for fake news, right? And I'm like, I don't know this guy, so I don't know what his intentions could be. He seems fairly Republican-ish in a way. I don't know. But I think that he's fine. And, interesting. He's blocked by Linda Sarsour. Okay. If I'm being personal, I think that's a good thing. I think Linda is the Muslim equivalent of DeRay, where they're kind of both the props of the establishment, despite good work that they may have done or are doing. So that article's weird. I'm going to get back to my article on the Allman Brothers, because this shit is bananas. Bananas. And I published an article today that on Counterpropa, and I'm sorry if you read it early, because there were a lot of typos. This is so embarrassing. I'm sitting here tweeting. I'm like, it takes me, in every page I write, it's one beer that I drank, and I'm like laughing at myself, and I think I'm so funny. And then I'm like, I published an article and I sent it to HA, and I proofread it, but there were like 50 typos, and I was like, did the Russians just hack this legitimately? No, it probably wasn't the Russians, Zach. You literally were tweeting about drinking the entire time you wrote this, so maybe that's why you had a typo every 5 words. So if you read those, I'm sorry. And HA is a saint about cleaning them up. And if you hate typos in the Counterpropa article, go to my Medium, because I always publish it on my Medium, and I can update my Medium and clean them all up, so you can share that faster, more reputably. I know it's better to share it off Counterpropa, and it is, but I am such an ass for calling up HA and being like, look, man, I'm so sorry. I'm calling you for the 3rd time. There's 14 typos, not 13. Here's one more. But there are 2 typos left in the one on HA, and I need to have him fix them. But I just literally, I keep interrupting these parents' lives, and they're with their children. I'm like, I'm so sorry to be like, you need to clean up my article. But I'm like, you need to clean up my article because I was drunk when I was writing it, and there are some typos, you can tell. So, the article that I wrote when I was drunk, I wasn't drunk, I was drinking, is called, I'm looking for it because I've tweeted a lot. Oh, God, every time I see Hillary's face, I just get mad. Oh, I hate her, she's so stupid. Oh my God, I can't believe what she said. I need to make sure to, God, and Chelsea Clinton, Jesus fucking Christ, they're so stupid. Here we go. No? So, here we go. Allman Brothers visas raise questions in wake of Barrington J. Weissnut Jr.'s death. Okay, so to give everyone a quick update on this, just real quick, because I want to give you an update. I have 20 minutes left, and I'm going to give you an update on my story. I want to talk about a couple things, but I want you to know about this story. So basically, as you may know, same area, we're talking in Miami, and all of these things are basically, everything is coming crashing down on Debbie Wasserman right now. And I spelled her last name wrong a lot, which, apology for every time I spell Debbie what's her name shits' last name wrong. I legitimately, so my phone is on my computer right now, so you actually can see. And so when I'm typing Wasserman Schultz in the keyboard, I hate it because I hate talking about her. I hate polluting my brain with the thought of her. It's the worst thing ever. But we need to call her out every time, and she's got her mug with the snarl on her face on my computer right now, and that already annoys me to begin with. And so whenever I'm writing her last name, this is how it starts, and then by the end I'm just mad because I have to fucking talk about her again. And so I spell her last name wrong a lot because I'm just I don't even want to fucking think about how to spell her shit because I hate that she's even in my brain. And by the time I'm typing her last name, I'm swearing in my mind, pounding the computer, and if it's page 5 of an article, I'm not sober. So apologies for spelling her last name wrong all the time. I try to be good, but sometimes it's just impossible. So this article, I was supposed to leave a little so I could have some more orange juice in this next one. Whoops-a-doodle. So unfortunately, and really tragically, last week, promising and outstanding public servant named Barrington J. Wyson Jr. Basically turned up dead on Miami Beach, on the beach in Miami, and it's so sad, and I hate that this stuff happens, because obviously this is murder, and how many people now kind of in this political arena have turned up dead at important times under troubling circumstances. These sicken me to my stomach every time these things happen, and I hate that we have to talk about them because I want the people who are going through it, his family and the legal community and everyone that, these are good people, and so every good person is affected by their death. It's not even just their loved ones and their community. I am affected by this, I am affected by Barrington's death. Period. We all are. And I hate that we have to be disrupted by news and reporting while we're mourning the good souls. I hate it. But this is crazy and scary. And Seth Rich obviously was killed this summer for some reason. He just so happened to be the data director at the DNC. Weird. Sean Lucas, the process server, died right after this suit was filed. I mean, may they all rest in peace. Seriously, moment of silence, for real. For Seth Rich and Sean Lucas and Barrington Wyson, whether or not they were officially connected, it's so tragic that people are dying because of this, and that's how bad it is on the other side, I guess, that these types of things are happening. And Barrington was a federal prosecutor that was just assigned in January. So I'm going to explain the situation that I wrote this article about, and I hope you read the article and share it, because it's a good summary. And so Barrington was shot in the head in probably the middle of the night. I don't even know. But basically his body was washed up first, early in the morning on Wednesday of this last week. And he had been recently assigned to a federal investigation in the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office, investigating visa and passport fraud. Now, Miami obviously is probably, if you were to think of the most crazy city in terms of visa and passport fraud in the country, it probably is Miami, honestly, right? There's probably, obviously along the Texan border and big airports, you're going to have a lot of immigration concerns, visa and passport fraud, but Miami as the port that it is, and the history of the city of Miami, and especially with the developments in Cuba and all of our relationships in the Caribbean with all the different nations, Miami is going to be a place where you're going to see a lot of visa and passport fraud, right? No question. So obviously we preface it with that, but this is Debbie Wasserman Schultz's district, right? That's odd. This is her district, and this federal prosecutor who had just recently been assigned, literally just at the beginning of the year, January, he had been assigned to this post, and he was investigating visa fraud. So if you hear that, it's very rare that a federal prosecutor is killed, right? That's not common. And, you don't jump to the conclusion necessarily that it was because of his professional life. I guess it could have been his personal life, right? That somebody murdered him. Like, there's an investigation ongoing. It's being investigated as a crime, thank goodness. So hopefully we will get to the bottom of it so there can be justice for Barrington. But, if it wasn't done, the motive wasn't a personal motive, it could have been a professional motive. And if it was done, that's again called retaliation. And if it was a retaliatory murder, that obviously has very drastic implications for law enforcement in determining what justice is needed as the outcome for when the case is resolved, assuming it will be, and hopefully it will be. So, Barrington died last week, and he was investigating visa and passport fraud. And so the first thing that I think of, and many people who follow me know this, I've worked in immigration for a long time. I've never worked for the government. I've always worked in the private sector doing immigration paralegal work. So basically I fill out visa applications for a living. And I've done that for about 10 years. So I've done a lot of work in immigration, and I am familiar. It's basically like just a really complicated college application process where it's like a visa application. You fill it out. You say, "Dear government," the business will say this, it's a petition. The business says, "Dear government, we have a software position that's open and we need it filled. And the best person we have for the job just so happens to be a foreign national. This is what the job is. This is why that person is qualified for it. Please approve the visa." You send that to the government, and if it fits, the government says sure. That person gets a visa stamp in their passport, and they can come in and they can do work for that company doing what the government approved is acceptable work for a foreign national in the United States through a U.S. company. So that's basically the general process for applying for work visas. That's what the company does. The company is the petitioner, and they ask for clearance for visas for a person to do work that they that they want to compensate someone for. Obviously, visa fraud can also include fiancé visas, can also include fraud is basically any type of misrepresentation to try and get an immigration benefit or any benefit, but in this situation, immigration benefit. So if you were to lie about how bad your situation was, for example, like if an individual was like lying to try and get refugee status, that would be fraud if they misrepresented their position. That would be the way a person would do that, and that would be a personal application of the U.S. government. For a work visa, work visas are filed by the U.S. company because the person who's employed the employee of that company will be the beneficiary of a petition to the U.S. government that a U.S. company did. That's the way immigration law works, and it kind of makes sense once you think about it, but most people don't know much about immigration law because it's a very kind of niche topic. But basically, if you're a U.S. company and you want a foreign employee to work for you, you have to make sure that they're eligible to work, whether they have a work permit or a specific work visa or a green card if they're a U.S. citizen. Everyone, when you get a job, you have to fill out the I-9 form, right? The I-9 form, what that's doing is the business is saying, we are checking off that we're not hiring anyone who isn't eligible to work in the United States. That's basically U.S. entities' due diligence that when they're giving someone a job, if they're doing it legally, obviously, that person is eligible to receive compensation in the United States. Because it could be, a foreign person, and we have laws that foreign nationals obviously need to seek visas if they're being employed in the United States. So we know that Barrington's investigating visa fraud, so he dies. So we immediately are like, that's crazy. They confirm it's being investigated as a crime, right? This isn't any kind of suicide, so it's confirmed that it's being investigated as a crime. So American people who are reading the news and want to know that our justice system is at least trying to function in a way that works, right? We want a proper investigation done in terms of the murder of a federal prosecutor, right? He's fighting for all of us, right? Our taxpayer money is being committed to the federal prosecutors to be able to uphold the law on our behalf, and for us to feel secure, we need to know that the federal prosecutors are doing their jobs. So it is in the public interest to know why a federal prosecutor would be murdered. and he was investigating visa fraud. So you immediately are trying to think of, if we want to know that this is a thorough investigation, if we want to make sure that the investigation in terms of what's reported from the police, the local authorities on this crime in Florida, if we want to know that it was done thoroughly, right, so we can feel at peace knowing that everything was done to fix the problem and to bring justice to the criminals that were responsible for it, we want to know that that was done thoroughly. So you would think about what any public situation would be, what public or powerful person, could be, what the motive, right? It's horrible to even have to think down this line, but it's like an episode of Law and Order or one of those shows that I don't watch, but I assume they vet this type of thing, is you would think about the motive. And so you would think about what high profile visa fraud could be going on in Miami, Florida. Weird, that's Debbie Wasserman Schultz district. Weird, what visa fraud could Debbie be involved in? Weird, it's not even that weird. I'm literally every day reading about her Pakistani employees that just stole a bunch of devices and data from the US government and fled the country. It's like, wait a second, I literally am hearing about these group of foreign nationals that just stole a bunch of high-sensitive U.S. government devices and documents from 20 Congress people and fled to their home country of Pakistan, where they're receiving government protection. It's like I'm literally hearing about foreign nationals that were employed by Debbie today, and then I found out that a federal prosecutor investigating visa fraud in Debbie's district turned up dead. It's not jumping to conclusions. It's taking very simple steps, and their conclusions are. That's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer quote. If anyone knows that, I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Back when it came out, back in the day, this is when I was straight, and I had a whole... Sarah Michelle Gellar was my crush, and I loved Buffy, so it's fine. Well, I loved Xander, but I loved Buffy. And I had all the Sarah Michelle Gellar pictures in my room, and the internet had just began, and I am hopeful that the GeoCities websites of the world come back one day and I can find these, because it's going to be completely humiliating that I did this. But basically, when I was in 6th grade, when the internet came out, I taught myself as much as I could, graphic design, HTML, and all that stuff, and I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And imagine how much I write now about politics. Imagine I was writing that about Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a 13-year-old in his basement at home. It's really terrible. And I had so many Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan sites because I faked. It's so terrible, but I didn't want people to see how much content I was putting up about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I literally faked having several different websites to put all the stuff up because I was so embarrassed, because people would always be like, you have too much time on your hands. And I was like, I'm just doing GeoCities South Beach websites, which is actually interesting because I had them all on the South Beach. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, GeoCities is hysterical, but I don't think those will turn up. And I don't remember why I mentioned that, but let's see here. Let me get back on track. Why did I talk about my GeoCities websites? That's funny. I hope they come up, though, because that would be hilarious. I'd be so embarrassed, but whatever. I was young, so it'd be fine. So, anyway, that was my Buffy quote. She says, I'm not jumping to conclusions. I took very small steps, and their conclusions were. This is the exact same thing with a visa fraud federal prosecutor being turned up dead in the district of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who literally is in the news and is literally freaking out and threatening the Capitol Police in D.C. about an investigation into Pakistani brothers that fled the country and back to Pakistan after being banned by the U.S. House of Representatives Security Network in February of this year because they stole documents. They stole devices. We can assume that everything on these devices, laptops, phones, every document that was downloaded on those computers, obviously these are IT staff, so they obviously have access to any of the information, networks, passwords, everything. This is basically the legitimate, absolute worst case scenario that could happen to Debbie Wasserman Schultz and to the Democratic Party right now. And let me tell you why. Basically, it's hilarious because Clinton and Wasserman Schultz and these people who are corrupt as shit work with people that obviously have to be corrupt too if they're working with them. And they think that they're going to promise loyalty, right? Clintons are always like, you better be loyal to me, better be loyal to me. That's the number one thing in Clinton world is loyalty. And they get these shady ass people to work for them, and they basically say, be loyal to us, period. Oh, what's up everybody watching in Tampa? Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for joining. they basically say we're going to work with corrupt people and expect them to infinitely be loyal to us, even though we know they're corrupt people. And so, it's the consistency principle to me. If you're going to hire people, if you're a corrupt person like Debbie or Hillary Clinton and are like, I need to hire people that are okay with me being corrupt and that will help me be corrupt. If you're so fucking stupid that you don't realize that that person will turn on you in a fucking hot ass second, you're so dumb. Because literally, if you're hiring corrupt people, not necessarily that they're corrupt to begin with, but they'll turn on you in a fucking second. And that was everything about Hillary Clinton to me is unintended consequences. Ever since Libya and ever since Clinton Foundation, all this stuff, the whole Clinton way is, let's just do whatever we want, it's fine, we'll apologize for it later, and we won't be in jail, so it'll be fine. Everything is unintended consequences. Going into Libya, obviously Libya has been in and out of civil war, it's completely destabilized state, full of a vacuum for terrorism because of Hillary's unintended consequences. And this stupid concept of we'll figure it out later, you see in basically everything that they do. It's insane. And Wasserman Schultz, all of them, they just do things without understanding the consequences. Like they hired this group of foreign nationals, Pakistani brothers, there's 2 of them. So here are your visa red flags. So there's 2 of them, but there's also 3 or 4. There's siblings, there's wives, it's a whole family network. So it's like this is a nepotism situation to begin with, which just kind of, is shady to begin with. Why would you be working with family members? It kind of insinuates that there's some kind of like loyalty here, right? This insinuates this kind of like base level of like we're blindly loyal to each other because we're family members. So the Alwan brothers have been working for Wasserman Schultz since 2005. I'm going to investigate their nationality and their visa background as much as I can now. I need to get in touch with George Webb. If anyone's here close to George Webb, I need to get in touch with him and ask him these questions. I know he's reported on it, but I need to vet. And I also have seen more information since I released my article. It came out last night, I think. A lot of people have come to me with source leads, and thank you so much, and please continue to give me source leads because I don't have a lot of time, but I get everything done as fast as I can, and it's super helpful for me to get information sent to me. So thank you for the people who have helped me lead the sourcing on how to investigate the visa fraud that Debbie Wasserman Schultz may have conducted, because regardless of if that was related to why Barrington died, Debbie Wasserman Schultz basically has been exposed for probably not being completely compliant with immigration laws in relationship to, I almost said en cuanto a because I'm listening to so much Shakira because her new album's amazing, it's all in Spanish, in relationship to this criminal investigation that's going on in terms of our IT staffers that have since fled the country and that stole documents and data and devices from the Congress people in the House. So this, again, like I said before, is basically the worst case possible scenario because these corrupt guys that are now back in Pakistan, they have all of the evidence that everything that Wasserman Schultz did as the DNC, everything that Clinton did, everything. Debbie Wasserman Schultz obviously is a congressperson. She was the head of the DNC, and she was in the Clinton campaign. So just Debbie herself is basically the epicenter of all of this data. So if anyone has access to all of Debbie's devices and computers, like Debbie's completely fucked. And these IT people weren't just Debbie's IT people. Debbie basically coerced these other House Democrats, right? Probably as part of her, like, these are the people on my team, we'll all use the same IT guys, they're the best. That's weird, but she definitely got people going. And 20 House members, 20 representatives used these guys. And so this is a huge number. Basically, they have so many different people in Congress, Democrats, they have access to every single thing that they've ever had on any of their network computers ever. And I will tell you that these people probably have shady shit on there that they don't want to be seen. So they're probably, as is being reported, they're probably being blackmailed by these guys to, obviously they want as much protection from the U.S. government as possible because we know what the U.S. government does to people that are leaking documents is it terrorizes them, despite the fact that all they're doing is leaking what the U.S. government is saying. It's using their words against them. But this is basically the absolute biggest possible crisis that the Democratic Party and the entire corporate oligarchy in Washington could have, is that foreign agents have unlimited access to basically everything within the Democrats' computers, networks, fundraising numbers, data, all of our personal information from every campaign we've been a part of. That legitimately has probably all been archived by these people since 2005. They've probably been storing it on their own devices the entire time, waiting for this to happen. And then guess what, Hillary? If you are corrupt and run a corrupt campaign and then lose, guess what? All those people that committed their time and energy to you thinking they were going to reap the benefit of it once you lose, they have nothing to thank you for anymore. And in fact, you lost your election to Donald Trump, so they might actually turn on you and have zero fucks to give now and actually keep fucking you over because probably everybody hates all of them. You know, it's just this really weird thing where it's like, why would Debbie or Hillary not expect people to turn on them? They lost the election. They were obviously idiots that thought they were going to win the election. They couldn't because they're idiots, and we all knew that, but they tried anyway. And now they expect people to not turn on them? That's so absurd. And basically now a bunch of devices are in the hands of foreign nationals that they weren't employed properly. So if I get back to the visa red flags, sorry I'm ranting, the visa red flags are two main things. The first main red flag is that basically everyone who works an IT job needs to have an IT degree to be approved for a visa to work in IT. There's very few immigration options for people to have to begin with the United States. That's why there's 13 million undocumented people in the country probably working. It's difficult to get a visa to begin with. So you know, like the likelihood of them having a visa since 2005, it's actually really interesting too, because if you tell anyone in the immigration legal industry, you'll say, oh, hey, these people have been here since 2005. It's like, well, that's a long time. They must be getting their green cards soon, right? If they've been here that long, they must be here legally, and they must be on the long path to green card, which is long for many people, but not for Pakistanis, actually. Pakistanis would get their green cards very quickly. So if these people were on legitimate work visas, they would have a green card by now. And I can't guarantee that they don't have a green card, because they might, but if they did, they also could have got that fraudulently, so we don't know. And with the U.S. government, the way that they give out work visas, you have to be very specific about what the type of work that person is doing. So in addition to needing to be eligible for the visa, and they could have bullshitted that these people had IT degrees when they didn't, because they're not doing actual IT, they're doing criminal operations. They could have bullshitted that the people had IT degrees and they don't, and got the visas approved on false pretenses, which would be fraud. And then if they had the visas, in order to not be to be violating visa rules, the employers need to be employing the foreign nationals with the pre-approved visa clearances in a good faith, bona fide employment agreement, right? And so besides the fact that, firstly, it is unlikely that all of the people that were employed by Debbie Wasserman Schultz and all these House Democrats had the appropriate visa clearances since 2005 or whenever this happened. It's hard to get visas. It's been a long period of time. They should be green card holders by now if they went through the proper process. It's really very unlikely that all of their visas were done completely in good faith, just based on the practicality of these folks getting visas and having been on the right ones since 2005 and still not gotten to a green card. Typically, if a person's in a long-term process, they've got a green card within 3 to 10 years. Sometimes it takes longer, but the people it takes longest for are people of Mexican, Indian, or Chinese nationality, because those are the countries that have the most applicants for green cards, so the wait lines are longer for those countries. Pakistan is a very short wait, so those people will get their green cards very fast if they were in indefinite employment agreements. So there's total shadiness in terms of what visas they were on to begin with. And then the other shady aspect is that basically it's well known, and the Daily Caller has a bunch of outstanding research on this, is that basically it was well known that these employees didn't even necessarily show up, right? It's kind of like IT guys, right? Like in your kind of general mind, the IT guys, they come and go, they do whatever because they're wearing their sweatpants and they're working from their laptops wherever. They don't need to be physically in the office, so they don't necessarily need to be there. Well, yeah, that's kind of the case, but at the same time, for immigration, there are actually very specific requirements in terms of where the workplace is, because the U.S. government, through the Department of Labor, makes sure when you're applying for a work visa that the U.S. employer isn't taking advantage of the employee in most visa classifications, you have to report people's salaries regardless in any visa class. Some visa classifications do require that you're paying what's called the prevailing wage of the location of employment. So if you're applying for a visa, there's no question that you're going to have to tell the government where you are physically working. In most cases, that's saying, I am working at the White House, the exact address, 1 Pennsylvania or whatever the address is, I'm working at this exact address and I'm going to be physically present there 40 hours a week. And that's part of how the US government monitors fraud, is because once in a while they will audit people who say, oh, we have all of these foreign nationals working at this work site. Here's the work site that's presented on the visa applications for approval. And so if the US government shows up on a random audit, ICE is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement that enforces these workplace audits, which are becoming more common and will become more common under Trump, which is part of the reason why it's like, that's weird. This could be why Barrington was assigned to Miami to begin with, is because they're increasing their fraud investigations. And guess what? The people who are fraudulent, the worst ones are probably the powerful Democrats. It's like, it's so obvious. It's legitimately like, who is the most successfully fraudulent people? It's legitimately the Democratic Party. So they have the most, probably more than anyone. Obviously, a lot of people commit fraud, probably, but the people who, the bigger they are, the harder to fall, right? The biggest people to like go down on this are probably Democrats that have been getting away with shit for all this time, and Trump's instituting stuff where they're like, oh my god, fuck, we're gonna have people on local levels in the Trump effect busting corruption for the first time, and the Democrats obviously only stand to lose on that because the Republicans are going to get a little bit more cushion because they're Republicans, and the Democrats are not going to get any of that kind of, they're not going to get nearly as much of that lenience that Republicans are going to get. So cheers to Democrats getting busted for corruption, because I think they're better at corruption than the Republicans, if I'm being honest. But to reiterate, the two visa red flags in the Alwyn brothers situation, and Debbie was responsible for this. She was the one who set this up, that she was the head of the DNC, and senior leadership at the Clinton campaign is very relevant to her management of this group of foreign nationals that came to the United States. She set them up in likely fraudulent visa situations. She probably legitimately committed fraud, especially because this all happened when Clinton was Secretary of State, right? The Secretary of State, and that's part of the reason why Clinton at state was such a concern, because state controls passports, state controls visas for every country in the world. So imagine how corrupt Debbie and Hillary are, super corrupt. Imagine them influencing that corruption in their relationship with every country in the earth through the Department of State. It's really mind-blowing how corrupt they possibly could be, and in my view, everything they do is corrupt and for money, and so it's like you can expect the worst. Honestly, you can hope for the best, but expect the worst. And Hillary at state meant so we saw, and especially with Obama, so the two big scandals that came out about the immigration system recently were two things. One, last fall in the WikiLeaks emails, it was released that basically Obama was selling ambassadorships, and probably, obviously, Hillary, he had to go through Hillary on all this, because this is right when Barack took office, and basically he gave ambassadorships all to countries all over the world to big donors. And so obviously if he appointed Hillary Clinton as Department of State, as Secretary of State, and he was appointing ambassadors based on pay to play, this is the most obvious pay to play situation we've seen. We have a ledger that shows, literally as an Excel spreadsheet that said ambassador of this country donated this much money to DNC, got this result. Like, that was one of the leaked documents. So we know that Obama, which is true to Illinois politics, which are corrupt as shit, and Illinois, okay, it's so weird. If you don't remember this, just remember this. Illinois is where legitimately all of the corruption comes from. Clinton's from Illinois, Hillary Clinton's from Illinois, Obama's from Illinois, Blagojevich, Daley, like all of the corruption starts in Chicago and in Illinois. It's insane. And Barack was obviously selling, oh my god, I'm so over time. I have to stop soon. Fuck. Oh my god, I'm so carried away. God damn. I'm just drinking. Okay, I'm going to cover for 4 more minutes. Thanks for sticking with me, everyone. Sorry, Steve, if you're watching. I'm totally over. I hope I'm not encroaching on someone else's time. But real quick, so pay to play was exposed as a huge thing. Barack obviously had to have been in on Hillary with it if she was becoming Secretary of State and he was appointing all of the donors. It was basically Hillary and Clinton and Barack Obama just decided who they all wanted as ambassadors together based on the people that gave them the most money going into it. Duh, that was probably planned after Hillary conceded to begin with. Done. So that's a huge scandal that's affected the immigration and the Department of State function. The other big scandal was it was revealed that CBP, the Customs and Border Protection, received, I think it was $15 million in bribes over the last 10 years. I'll repost the article tonight from New York Times, but basically, and I quoted this in my article you should read, the CBP, basically the people at the border, were busted for accepting bribes. And obviously, if you imagine Hillary Clinton at the Department of State, you probably can reasonably assume that legitimately Hillary got to state and was like, all right, everyone, Border Patrol agents, you guys want bribes? I'm cool like that. Yeah, take your bribes. Just take them. Legitimately, you can imagine that CBP officers were probably at least under the impression, if they know anything about the Clintons, that bribery was going to be fine. And so legitimately, there was a massive pay-to-play scandal that took place, selling ambassadorships, that's Department of State, that's immigration relationship. CBP had a massive bribery scandal where it was shown that CBP officers are basically getting paid out by people coming in. Legitimately, the Alwan brothers could have just paid their entry every single time they came to the United States. That's a perfectly legitimate possibility that they did that. And because of those two recent scandals, again, it's legitimately possible that there's more corruption seeping in throughout these related groups, right? So those are the two elements of visa fraud that could be playing into the Alwan brothers investigation right now. One, that no visas were necessarily secured to begin with. Fraud may have occurred to get the visas to begin with. And secondly, to whatever extent they were working, if there were no-show employees, which is widely reported, if there are no-show employees, that violates the approved visa clearance where you apply to the government and say, look, I'm going to hire this person for 40 hours a week. We're going to pay him $50,000 a year. If you're not actually in that bona fide agreement where the person is putting in the hours, you're verifying that by them physically attending the worksite, and you are paying them that, the government looks at the pay stubs. If there are no-show employees, they shouldn't be getting paid. And so obviously the Clintons and the whole DNC group love just paying each other for not doing anything. So if that took place, that's another visa fraud. That's another element of visa fraud. So the two elements are visas weren't necessarily secured to begin with, and the second element is visas that may have been secured probably were abused. And the H-1B and L visa rules and the visa abuse, which is the biggest low-hanging fruit, and I tweeted about this a long time ago because I'm like, if Trump wants to address low-hanging fruit in immigration, he will go for visa abuse in H-1B and L classifications because those are the main professional visa classifications, and he eventually did announce that, and it's likely that he's going to start cracking down on foreign companies before he comes down on U.S. companies. But he legitimately announced that he's cracking down on visa fraud, specifically related to H-1B and L employer agreements, and this is the exact type of thing that Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Democrats and their technology partners that are employing these guys would have been circumventing if they were trying to get these people to work without authorization. And if they were working with authorization, I, as an immigration paralegal, have no idea what visas they would have been on that they're not on green cards by now. I just don't know. So, and by that I mean it can't be legitimate. Because if it made sense, I would legitimately tell you. I'd be like, there's no fraud there. I would tell you that. I would be happy to tell you that and just keep us all informed. So those are the two main fraud elements that may have been investigated by Berenson Weissnot if his death if at the result of this criminal investigation into his murder, if it was in any way retaliatory by anyone, if there were visa issues in Debbie Wasserman Schultz's life because his murder happened in her district, they very well could have been related to this Alwan brothers investigation. And the video of Debbie Wasserman Schultz threatening the chief of police in D.C. for holding this laptop that had incriminating information from her on it, you need to watch that video. It's in my article. It is shocking. It's like the face of guilt like you've never seen before. It's really holy shit. Obviously her whole world is crashing down on her, which it is, and she deserves the karma that's coming to her. But this video is really, really a must watch, and I thank you for everyone who retweeted it the day the Democrats live thing was going on, because we totally sabotaged them so hard. It was amazing. And so watch that video. I have a video about that too on my YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out for a longer explanation. I was kind of flustered because it really does shock me. As much as I know how corrupt these people are, it really does shock me every time I really see how corrupt they are, because I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is so bad. There's no even like discernible way they could have covered for having legitimate visa clearance for all these people. There's no way. I can't even come up with any kind of idea. They just didn't even give a shit that it was going to be completely obvious that they were having foreign nationals set up an IT operation in Congress in Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz's circle, and not, without even the guise that they might be on legitimate work visas. It's crazy. Really crazy. And if they were legal permanent residents, that changes everything too, because there's different laws for legal permanent residents. So it's unlikely that they're legal permanent residents. So I am going to dig on that for you guys, and I will get you more information on that as soon as I can. Hillary's been out there being like, oh, it's the DNC's fault. I legitimately couldn't when I saw that. There's so much shit that's going on right now. I'm just like overwhelmed even thinking about it. That's why I have a YouTube channel now. So check out my YouTube channel, The Zach Haller Affair. Subscribe, watch my videos. I'm going to do one right after this with this in short. And I should wrap up because I'm supposed to only do 1 hour. But this is really a lot of information. And I have more, but no time. Thank you all for joining me. My name is Zach Haller, and this is Real Progressives. Please subscribe, join, tell all your friends about Real Progressives. It's legitimately like the best place for legit, straight up activism. And check me out on Twitter, on Medium, on YouTube, and support independent journalists. There's a really strong front right now of independent journalists that are coming together, and it's really amazing. So absolutely support Real Progressives community and what Steve is building. Support H.A. Goodman, support Tim Black, support Debbie, the same progressive, doing amazing work. Watch her video with Vanessa Beeley. We're working on transcribing that to get that out to everyone. Caitlin Johnstone and I are doing one day podcast. Caitlin is the most amazing human being on earth. Obviously, read every single thing that she writes. Mike Signato's continuing to kill it. We've got a really, really, really good, strong network of independent journalists coming together, lots of new people coming into the fold. Thanks to everyone for helping source stuff for me. I get a lot of information and insight from people on Twitter and the internet, and I really appreciate that. I do feel like it's a group effort, and that makes it fun for me when I'm getting these long articles written out, and I'm like, oh my god, I want to be doing anything but this, but we need to know, and we need to know. So I'll write it, but it's fun when you guys join me. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for drinking if you did. If you got high, thanks for that too, because I love when you do that. I love you guys back. And I'm going to do a quick video for my YouTube, so I'll post that in a little bit. But other than that, I might be on, I'm on vacation right now, but I might hop on with Steve or Mike on Real Progressives here in the next few days, especially in light of this weird DNC thing, which is kind of mostly a nothing burger. Again, let's look to see if the DNC is going to confirm or deny that this call, or excuse me, let's look to see if Debbie Wasserman Schultz will confirm or deny if this call came from her office, and we'll go from there. So I may hop on with you again sometime this weekend. If not, I will see you next Thursday. Thank you guys so much for joining me from Vancouver, Canada, British Columbia. Cheers. I'm going to finish my drink, so you better too. Oh, here we go. Okay, can I do something stupid because it's the very end and I'm not wearing pants? Oh shit, I was supposed to tell you guys. If you're not wearing pants, that's fine. I was supposed to tell you at the beginning I'm not wearing pants because I'm on vacation. So if you wanted to not wear pants for this whole thing, you could have. But anyway, I'm going to just test this out real quick for fun. So I got this in the mail, and I hate to be like product placement, but I got this in the mail. It's called the Shambong, and because I had to. And so it's a bong for champagne. And so someone like the thankful flower. Did I see a thankful flower? So this is what's called the Shambong, and it is apparently a bong that is for champagne, and I don't really know how that's gonna work, but I do have a little bit left, so if we want to try it together, we can. So I'm gonna really quick try this just for fun because I'm on vacation and what the hell. I don't know how this is gonna work. Let's see if there's directions. I'm gonna try and get this done in 1 minute or less. Step 1. Okay, I'm gonna read this. Okay. All right, here we go. So I got to start at a lower angle. I'm probably going to like puke, guys. I do not want to chug champagne, but I kind of want to chug champagne because I'm on vacation. So hold on. That was awesome. Oh my god. Totally sold. Loved it. It was a little fast, but oh my god. I hate to be product placement. It's probably a corrupt, predatory company that makes the Shambong, but it was really fun. So anyway, thanks guys. Happy weekend. It is officially your Thursday weekend now, so grab a Shambong or anything else. My name is Zach Howard. This is Real Progressives. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next week. Bye.